What do you think about the sentencing today?
Today marks the end of one chapter in this saga with the conclusion of the criminal matter. Judge Rosetti sentenced Robert Crimo to maximum terms, 7 consecutive life terms, one after the other, of natural life without the possibility of parole. And then beyond that, 47 consecutive terms of 50 years each for each individual count of attempted murder. So today is the end of this part of the journey for the victims, for the families, for those who have been so affected by this. But there is more left to do. The civil justice system will now pick up to make sure that we hold accountable all those parties, all those companies who had any role whatsoever in the tragedy that occurred on the 4th of July, 2022. So today, justice was done in a legal sense. All that Judge Rosetti could have done in the context of a criminal courtroom was done. Everything that we could possibly do within the context of the civil justice system, we will do. But justice, true justice, could never be done in this case. For the McCarthy family, justice would be that little Aiden McCarthy would walk out of a kindergarten today and see his mother and his father waiting there with open arms to greet him. He was robbed of that by this man. So many other families were robbed of those experiences. Birthdays, Christmases, celebrations. And forever this community will be marred by the evil of one man that was enabled, make no mistake, by others.
Was it 47 or 48?
Correction, 48 counts, I believe.
What did you think of the judge's statement speaking how brutal and heinous these crimes were and really pushing for the maximum in all facts?
2 observations about what Judge Rosetti did today. One, she clearly listened and took to heart all of the statements that were made, all of the evidence in the course of these proceedings. She was also meticulous in making sure that the proper statutory factors were applied. And one of the things that you may have noticed is she had said, if the law were ever to change. So what that means, this sentence today, is that Robert Crimo will rot in a cage where he belongs, that he will never see the light of day, that he will never breathe air with free people. And that is everything that could have been done, and that is the appropriate thing that should have been done.
And how is Aiden doing today?
We really don't want to comment on really the inner province of Aiden's life now, other than to say that all of those who are entrusted with his care love him dearly and are doing everything possible to make sure that he moves beyond this and can recover as best as one possibly can under these circumstances.
Was there anything you learned in the last 2 days that will help change the civil case? You know, we heard that he cased out and scouted locations and tracked things like that. Does that change the scope of your lawsuit?
I don't know that it would necessarily change the scope, but one of the things that happens now with the conclusion of the criminal case is an abundant amount of evidence that we have not been able to see yet will soon be available to us. And so that is going to be critical, because obviously the investigation in this case that was done in the hours, days, and months following the event really was done with the criminal justice system on multiple levels with multiple different agencies. And because of the pendency of the criminal proceedings, we have not been privy to that information. Now we will be. And we will be able to use that body of evidence in the prosecution of our civil claims.
What exactly are you seeking in the civil case?
What we are seeking are damages on behalf of, with respect to our client, damages on behalf of those parties, including the gun manufacturer and the gun sellers, that were complicit in putting this weapon in the hands of someone who, by law and who, by any exercise of reasonable care, never should have had it. And so really it's a separate chapter that is separate and apart from the criminal proceedings.
Can you speak to any legal precedent for that case that might help you in the civil case?
You mean the criminal case?
No, the seeking damages from the gun manufacturer.
This is something that the context of civil law is relatively new. We have just survived a motion to dismiss that was brought by the defendants. Our claims are going forward, which means now we're going to go into the part of the lawsuits that deal with discovery. We get to find out not only what happened in the investigation of the criminal case, but what these defendants knew, what they were doing in terms of marketing these weapons, and how all of that interplays with our claims. And so really, it's been a groundbreaking piece of litigation in the sense that we have survived this motion to dismiss, and now we are at issue. Now we are getting to the specifics of what occurred and why.
Does that stand to protect people in the future, possibly?
Most definitely. And one of the things that we have to start to realize is these gun massacres are not just the byproduct of one lone deranged individual at a time. And if there are not common sense steps taken to make sure that dangerous weapons do not get in the hands of dangerous people, we're going to be right back here. There is no question whatsoever. And so, separate and apart from addressing the harm that has happened to so many victims, part of this is to make sure that we are not doing the same thing, repeating the same tropes about thoughts and prayers, and then nothing changes, and we just go out and we wait for the next massacre. That can't happen anymore. The Second Amendment can live together with responsibility. And so that is something that anyone on any side of the political spectrum ought to be able to realize and agree with.
As far as this body of evidence that you're going to get, is it everything? Or how are you going to get it?
The evidence that we accumulate will take place through the exercise of the normal civil discovery process. There will be subpoenas to third parties. There will be requests, both written and oral, to the actual defendants. And that investigation is going to be exhaustive. We have the collective wisdom and power of a multiple number of firms that are all going to be participating in this effort, because these lawsuits, for purposes of discovery, are consolidated. So that is something that we anticipate is going to take a lot of time. It's going to involve a lot of fights, because they are not going to give up this information willingly or easily, and we are going to be ready for that fight starting today.
I'm curious if Crimo's erratic behavior, including not showing up for court today and then whatever happened in that last hour or so, does that play a role at all in your proceedings, the civil proceedings? Is it going to come up, do you think?
I think less so. Really what happened today was something that was unsurprising, coming from someone who has displayed such a profound level of cowardice. And it was interesting because when we first heard that he might be coming out for the proceedings, and it was a very dramatic moment, a deputy handed a note over to the judge, proceedings were stopped, and it was learned in the subsequent minutes that he might actually come out and face so many of the people who he has harmed. And what we realized is that had nothing to do with today's proceedings. It had nothing to do with the murders he committed, the attempted murders he committed. He wanted to complain to the judge about books that he wasn't getting in jail. So that says it all. Anything else? Okay, thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Today was the culmination of such a long journey that started on July 4th, 2022, when I was shot in the pelvis with my husband and my daughter at the parade. Today, I was able to hear Judge Rosetti sentence him, I'm not going to use his name, to 50 years for my attempted murder. And while I don't have closure, it's closing a chapter on this part of our lives. And I don't have to think about him anymore. I don't have to worry about him anymore. And me and my husband and my daughter can continue to move forward, and I can continue to heal. And we can focus on ourselves. We don't have to focus on him any longer.
Did you want to see him here? Or?
You know, I was here in June of last year when he pulled his stunt with the plea. I saw him then. You know, would it have been nice that he wouldn't have been a coward and would have shown up? Sure. But at the same time, wasn't surprised at all. And regardless of whether he was there or not, this was going to happen. So, you know, I don't need to see his face. I know what he looks like. I watched the videos with the confession. That was enough to see how cavalier he was about murdering 7 people and injuring 48 others and trying to destroy a community that he didn't destroy. Highland Park is resilient, and he didn't get what he wanted at the end of the day. He hurt a lot of people, but we're all here, and we're going to mourn those that we lost, and they're always going to be in our hearts and our minds. But at the end of the day, he's the loser. He's going to prison for the rest of his life, and we're never going to have to see him again.
How comforting was it to see the judge give all the max sentences and really make a statement in all of her comments throughout this?
It was really comforting to see how how well the state's attorney's office really laid out what he did and why he deserved those maximum sentences. And it was vindicating hearing that 50 years and hearing those life sentences, even though the life sentences at least were going to be mandatory, given what happened.
Was it because you distress and some of the other families and people distress, this whole thing about, he's coming to the courthouse and, he may or may not say something? I mean, was that hard for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was stressful. Anytime you get a wrench thrown into your plans, it's going to be stressful. But, again, at the same time, the way that he's tried to exert control throughout this entire process has been to try to throw these wrenches in the works, whether it's representing himself and going back to his lawyers, or saying he's going to plea and not going to plea, or not showing up to court. The Judge Rosetti made it very clear to him that this was going forward with or without him. When that happened today, did it give me a little bit of anxiety? Absolutely. But the nice thing was that we were there together as a group, and we were there to support each other and move through it, because we knew, regardless of whatever antics he was trying to pull, that this was going to go forward and he was going to get this sentencing regardless.
I know there was some discussion among some of the folks up in the court about if he did appear turning their backs on wanting to. Did you hear that?
No, I'm not sure that I heard that or not. Yeah, I didn't hear that specifically. People are angry and frustrated, and I think that everyone's going to have a little bit of a different response.
Liz, can you just speak to
what it was like being in a room full of neighbors and how you were able to comfort each other through the last 2 days?
That was just a really big part of how we were able to get through this. Immediately after the shooting, the support of our community, the support of people that, we didn't even know, was so important. We joked that, my daughter was 3 at the time, and just the number of just stuffed animals and toys sent to the house for her, we had to ration so she wouldn't think that there was, a Christmas in July. And it's amazing how, you go through something traumatic like this and how it builds these relationships and these friendships with people who you might not otherwise ever get to know or ever cross paths with. And while it's traumatic, and while we're all in a club that none of us ever wanted to be in, you do get that comfort, because while it feels like there's a mass shooting every day in this country, it's still a small group of us that have each other to lean on. And it makes all the difference in the world for something like this.
Do you see, you mentioned this is the end of this part of the journey. Does the next journey include keeping in touch with any of those people?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I've developed relationships with a few of the other victims and survivors that are, really lovely, wonderful people, and we'll for the most part, still live in the community. So it's not just getting together, it's running into each other at the grocery store or, or grabbing coffee and doing those things, or even being for each other, as we continue down our paths of healing as well, because it doesn't stop today. I have this today because just having more pain the past few days. This courthouse is huge. I'm doing a lot of walking, and so I needed my cane more, and that's going to continue to happen. And it's nice to have folks who you can text or you can call and just be like, yeah, God, this was crappy, and they get it.
And how has your recovery been? I mean, how has it changed your life in the day-to-day work? I was shot in the pelvis and had significant tissue and nerve damage as a result. And it's given me really chronic pain. And the tissue damage, has impacted really just the way that my left leg is able to move. So I deal with pain every day. The intensity of it changes. I'd say one of the big pieces for me is I had surgery in November of 23 where I had a dorsal root ganglion stimulator placed on my spine, which does neuromodulation to try and help with the pain, and that helped immensely. I'm able to bounce back more quickly than I used to, which has been great. But at the same time, I have a now 6-year-old, and I can't run.
About an hour ago, Theo airballed the game-winning shot. But with the Zaxby's sauce boss box, he's dunking all over these fools.
Welcome to Dunk City. I'm the mayor and the sheriff.
Who's got the sauce?
Zaxby's.
Medicaid covers health care for 72 million Americans, helping seniors, veterans, and
I can't, if I'm in a lot of pain, I can't get down on the ground and play dolls with her. It means that my husband has to take on other responsibilities just because I'm physically unable to do it. I told the story that, for a long time I had to have an exercise step next to my bed to be able to get in and out because it was too high and my body wasn't able to do that. And finally, a few months ago, I just said, I'm sick of this. Let's go out and get some new furniture. And now I have a lower bed, and it's great, and it helps, and I can get in and out, and it's just weird things like that you wouldn't think could make such a difference that do.
People have talked a lot about sort of moving forward from today after this trial is over. I guess for you tonight, what do you do after a trial like this, and then July 4th, what?
Tonight, honestly, we're probably just gonna sit on the couch and watch TV. I don't know. I can't imagine there being a whole lot. Our daughter's gonna come home from school and she might want to color or hang out or, go and ride her bike outside, and, that's probably gonna be the extent of it. But moving forward from here, it's, jumping back into life. I'm gonna, take a beat to really take care of myself. Past couple of days have just been really, really draining. And then it's, it's back to work, it's back to life. Life doesn't stop just because something like this happens. And that's what we deal with. We haven't really decided exactly what we're going to do for the third 3-year mark, of the shooting. The past couple of years, we've gone up to Wisconsin and have been in the middle of the North Woods, away from everyone. So we'll see what we're up to, what we're up for now, and go from there.
Are you going to tell your daughter what happened here today?
Yeah, we've been talking with her about it. you know, it was nice because, you know, with school and getting to the courthouse early enough, we had to do some logistics changes and drop her off at her best friend's house. And she was more excited about getting to have breakfast with her best friend than anything else over the past couple of days. But she knows about it. She knows that there's the bad man that hurt mommy. And she knows that he was going to go to jail for the rest of his life and he wasn't going to hurt anybody else anymore. But, you know, she's just so empathetic. You know, I talked to her about that, and her concern was, you know, whether or not he'd still get to have birthday parties in prison because she's a kid. And, you know, those are the things that are important, and just the level of empathy for someone who she knows. We call him the bad man. It's just, she amazes me every single day. With everything that she's been through.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Just to understand that, she wants him to be able to have birthday parties?
Yeah, I mean, not that she wants him, but she, you know, she doesn't understand the concept of prison and the idea that you just have everything taken away from you like that. It just, to a certain extent, everything feels cool to her, you know? And yeah, I mean, birthday parties are important. Birthday parties are fun. For her, that means, oh my goodness, he's having all the fun taken away? So yeah, he's having all the fun taken away. She was okay. But no, she knew we were coming here yesterday and today. We talked with her about it. But it's safety. So, all right.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Thanks all. Nice to see you. Thank you.
Ashby, you've been very vocal throughout this entire process. What does today mean to you? See it so close.
It is the close of a very difficult chapter, and hopefully, I just hope that everyone who has been affected by this is going to begin that road to healing, like real closure, because he is not ever going to walk free again.
And what has this been like with your neighbors? What does that healing look like going forward from now? What does it look like the past 2 years getting this?
I think we've just all held our breath just to make sure that he would never ever be free again. And now that that's happened, it's like we can exhale, and knowing that he will not be free.
Talk a little bit about the gun reform measures that you've been pushing for and traveling and speaking about, and kind of what's next.
Yeah, I definitely know deep down that the only way to prevent future mass shootings, the only way to prevent any of these tragedies is through passing gun safety legislation. But we also have to change the way that we talk about mass shootings. We currently have all mass shootings under one umbrella, and not all mass shootings are the same. So I've been working with Representative Seth Moulton from Boston on a bill that would change the way we talk about mass shootings and charge mass shooters, some of them differently, depending on the caliber of or the type of weapon and the location where the mass shooting happened. We are looking at creating a bill or a law that would make these automatic terrorism charges. This is domestic terrorism. When someone walks into a school with an AR-15 and murders children and intends to murder as many as they can, or they open fire in a movie theater or a grocery store, they are committing domestic terrorism. They are overwhelming our first responder systems. They are disrupting our economy. They are putting an extraordinary financial impact on everybody, between people who have lost their lives, their families, people who are injured, and even people who just witness these incidences. They are carrying a horrible financial impact, and it's time for us to call this what it is. These kinds of mass shootings are domestic terrorism.
What do you hope to accomplish with that? I mean, he was sentenced to 7 life sentences today. What would you hope that domestic terrorism charge would do?
Well, there's a couple things. First, with all mass shootings being under one umbrella, this would make a distinction so that in marginalized communities where they have mass shootings much more frequently, because they're differentiated between a mass shooting like ours, they would get more focused data, more focused solutions for those communities instead of this being one big umbrella. Also, I spoke with somebody from the Parkland shooting, and their shooter is in jail, reading fan letters, eating good food. Somebody who has a federal domestic terrorism charge would go to a supermax prison where they would spend most of their time in solitary confinement. They would be eligible for the death penalty. And it's time for us to hold these shooters accountable as with the fullest extent of the law that we can.
When you talk about the death penalty there, was there any, I guess, interest or push from yourself or other people to try and get something like that for
No, not that I'm aware of.
I'm sure you never imagined being in this role, being so vocal about certain legislation. Why did you want to do that, and how has that been for you?
I think it was very frustrating to me to see that it's a case by case basis. The feds get to decide who gets a terrorism charge, and looking into what shooters have gotten this kind of charge, it's literally a case by case basis. Like the Parkland shooter didn't, but another school shooter did, and this is domestic terrorism. We have to start calling that. We have to start charging shooters, and for what this is, which is terrorism. We walk around it and we don't talk about it for what it is, and it's time to change that. And so I just started talking to lawmakers about the possibility of doing this bill, and Rep. Moulton he's going to introduce it soon.
Did you learn anything yesterday with some of the video that was shown that maybe you didn't know from the interrogation at all, or no? Was there anything that you walked away like, wow, I didn't know that?
I did not know that he had been planning it for so many years. I did not know that he had taken a moment to decide if he was going to do it. I did not. There were a lot of things that I learned about that, yeah.
Has anything about the trial changed how you sort of think about this drive you've been going for, or has that kind of stayed consistent after this?
I definitely, seeing that he didn't get that terrorism charge definitely changed my opinion about our judicial system. And also, right now I really call on Pam Bondi to look at these kinds of mass shootings and charge them appropriately. She should be charging the FSU shooter with terrorism. I don't know any other way to describe what these people are doing other than that.